Good afternoon, everyone. So, students, I had told that I will not come again, but I'm sorry, you'll have to listen to me again. Uh, the There was some emergency for the other faculty, so I'm filling the gap. Great, Hardik, if you really missed me, that's nice. But if a few people would be like, "Oh, I have to see you again." Great, great. I'm glad that that is not the reaction, and the reaction is that yes, you're very excited that yes, I'm here. You're great. So you again, you have come again. Very nice. Yes, God. Very, very pleasant messages that yes, people are happy to see me. I hope I will not bore you. I will because these are all procedural classes, and we will try to make it interesting. The idea is not to reiterate. I've seen some faculties going through the board of studies material itself and explaining, so I will not do that. I will not explain the board of studies material as it is, because that is already there with you. I will teach you why such procedural aspects are there, right? So that will involve interest in you, saying that yes, thing in this topic, why it is there in the GST law itself, and then why it is there in our syllabus itself. Because these things are very, very practically required. Whatever we had read, non-procedural, the legal aspects, that is there to set up the foundation for you. But these procedural aspects will give you the practical edge. Okay, so when you read this, you may get little dicey because they are all very practical, but theoretically are very bad. But if you have to do practical, your theory has to be strong. That's why we will go through these chapters and understand the bit on how this is practically useful. Okay, yes, yes. Welcome everyone and happy new year to everyone. Have a good start of the year. Have a wonderful year. This year you're writing your exams. So all the very best for your exams and let this year be very memorable for you. Great. So we have very less time today in terms of coverage of e-way bill, but we have also multiple choice questions in this chapter. So we will take up the MCQs also. Now, what is e-way bill? The topic for today is e-way bill. Now, we know that we have understood various documents under GST. We know what is a invoice, what is a debit note, what is a credit note. Then this topic did not come there. Now they are separately dealing with e-way bill. Why is it so? It should be part of that itself, right? When invoice is there, when these are all, they are all documents. So why do, just out of curiosity, just give me your blank answers. Why e-way bill is not part of that chapter where invoice, debit notes, credit notes has been explained, and why separately e-way bill is there? There was delivery challan also. Yes, there was delivery challan. Very nice. So why is e-way bill separately been mentioned here? E-way bill has separate provisions. Okay, it's fine if they have separate provisions. Like invoice has separate provisions, debit note has separate provisions. It creates confusion generally. No, 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 no. This doesn't create confusion. Invoice is compulsory. It is not compulsory for all supply. Invoice is compulsory for all supply, and e-way bill is not compulsory for all supply. Okay. Bang on. Mahi is given correct answer. E-way bill is on movement of goods. Correct. So there is separate provisions, there is separate things. All of your answers are correct, but the actual reason why invoices is in a separate chapter and e-way bill is in a separate chapter is because invoice, debit notes, and credit notes is a document basis which you will make your supply, right? But e-way bill is not a document for the supply. It is a document for movement. Okay, so all the invoices, debit note, credit notes, delivery challan also was for supply. Okay, to prove supply. When you give some goods from the principal to the job worker, you have to give a delivery challan. When you supply some goods, you have to raise an invoice, and there is some correction in the invoice, then you have to raise a debit note. Those are the documents which will, basis which you will file your GST returns. Okay, those are the preliminary documents which form the basis for which you will file your GST returns and you will pay your GST taxes. Very nice, Bhaskar. Hi. But so the document basis which taxes has been paid and returns has been is filed is those invoices and debit notes. But e-way bill is a separate set of document, and it is not for the supply, it is for the movement of the goods. If you move your goods from seller to the buyer, you will have an invoice and have a e-way bill. So both the documents will be required when there is a movement of goods. Now, we understood movement of goods. Now I'll give you an example. You give me an answer after we go to the first slide. My question is, now I have made a sale over the counter. Okay. Now for this, should I raise a e-way bill or no? Okay. The question is that I have made a sale. When I make sale where there is a movement, I will raise a e-way bill. Now in my scenario, I am selling it at my shop itself. The customer is coming and buying it. Now for this, should I raise e-way bill or no is the question. We will get answer for this in a while. So let us, with that question, get into what is a e-way bill. E-way bill is a document for which is a system-driven document. The e-way bill, the name itself says electronic way bill. The reason why government has just made it e-way bill is the full form is electronic way bill. Way bill means whenever you move goods from one place to another, that movement should be recorded in that way bill, and it is generated electronically, so it is called as e-way bill. So for quick and easy movement of goods across India without any hindrance, this e-way bill is brought into GST, because before this there was no requirement of e-way bill under the VAT laws or under the sales tax laws. But because what used to happen, every movement used to happen with the invoice. Now, when the invoice used to happen, the government was always doubtful whether the document what is being carried and the goods what are being carried, whether it is matching or no. So every time there used to be a check post, and at the check post, all the movement of goods vehicle used to get intercepted, and they used to ask them, please provide us the invoice. We will check the quantity of the goods. We will check the value of the goods, whether it is correct or no. That was the main hindrance. Now, goods have to move from one place to another place. In between, if a check post officer catches, he will do the interception, he will do the verification, everything will be correct. But that much time is getting wasted. Correct? Because the officer wants to inspect it. To do away with this, saying that lot of inspection should not happen, they said, okay, whatever documents you are using to move the goods, that information you give it to us. And then if we have any questions, we will do the interception. So all movement of goods from one state to another state will not involve any interception, except when the officer or the GST authorities feel that yes, there is some suspicion, then they will randomly check some vehicles to check whether the quantity has to be checked on. Okay. So the reason of e-way bill is for quick and easy movement of goods across India without any hindrance. So check post has gone, and in place of check post, mobile squads will be there, wherein they will intercept some vehicles wherever they receive some information saying that wrong documents have been uploaded, wrong invoice number has been mentioned, value GST has been wrongly mentioned. That cases they will intercept. Where do you get this power from? The power for e-way bill or the officers to check it comes from section 68, and there are a set of rules. The primary motive, as we had discussed, is to check GST evasion. Any officer stopping the vehicle in between, the main reason is to check whether there is a leakage of GST, whether there is a leakage of revenue. To check unscrupulous, unfair trade, curtailing, unauthorized trade, also helpful in policing of trade of illegal goods. So, firstly, whether there is unfair trade, whether any unauthorized trade, that is also one of the reasons why they do the checking. And it also helps to see whether there is any movement of illegal goods. Then they put to rest the worries of the different officers, different worries of different states that they are losing out GST revenue. Now, some state may say that no, we are losing our revenue, or GST is going to another state. So that's why you have a e-way bill system, so that from where the goods are moving, from where the goods are they getting delivered, everything will get captured. So you don't have to worry. This is the answer which the center is giving to the state, saying that you don't have to worry that your GST is getting lost. Don't worry, your GST is not getting lost. And then introduce uniformity across the states for seamless generation of e-way bill. Now, GST is one act which is applicable all across India. VAT was different in each different states. So have one uniformity. That's where one e-way bill is used across for any movement from one state to another state. Now, when to generate this e-way bill? This is important. Prior to movement of a goods via a conveyance. Whenever you are moving goods through a conveyance could be a vehicle, a ship, a rail, any of these modes of transport, what you're using is a way conveyance. So any movement of goods via a conveyance would inform each transaction's details to the tax department and obtain a acknowledgement number. So before moving the goods, I have raised a sales invoice. I am dispatching it through a lorry. Before the goods are loaded into the lorry, or at the time of loading into that lorry, I have to mention the invoice number, value of the invoice, tax amount, and the lorry number in this e-way bill. Once I mention these details in the e-way bill, I will submit it online and I will get a acknowledgement. That means I have done my duty of informing to the GST authorities that this is a movement which I am taking place. So this is the way how a e-way bill is generated. Okay. So now coming back to our question, we understood basics of e-way bill. Now you tell me, when you are having a sale transactions at the counter, should you raise a e-way bill or not? Correct. Most of you are giving correct answer that yes, over the counter, when we sell something, there is no movement through any conveyance which is happening from my end. So I will not generate a e-way bill from the seller. But if the buyer is moving the goods, then the buyer will have to raise a e-way bill. Okay, so we will get into the complication, but primary answer is from the seller's perspective, no e-way bill. But from the buyer's perspective, he will have to raise it, because e-way bill can be raised by the seller as well as by the buyer. Okay. When we sell something on approval basis, we issue delivery challan or e-way bill. We have to issue both. So when you give sell something on approval basis, you will not raise an invoice. The document which is prescribed under the law is delivery challan. So you will use a delivery challan. Now that details of delivery challan has to be mentioned in the e-way bill, and e-way bill also has to be generated, because the basis for selling that on approval basis is delivery challan. So that is the primary document. Now it involves movement. So for that movement, you will raise a e-way bill. So e-way bill is not only for sale or purchase. As it is mentioned, it is for movement of the goods. So for any movement, let it be sale, non-sale, everything, you have to raise a e-way bill. Bill to ship to, yes, that also we will discuss. Even in case of bill to ship to, e-way bill is required because there is a movement where the movement is happening, there e-way bill has to be raised. So what is a e-way bill? When we see the meaning of it, e-way bill is a receipt or a document which is issued by a carrier giving details and instructions relating to the shipment of the consignment of the goods, and the details includes name of the consignor, consignee, point of origin, destination, and the route. So what is e-way bill? When we understand the definition of e-way bill, it's a receipt or a document which should generally be issued by the carrier. Carrier means the transporter should generally issue it. But now, if the transporter doesn't issue it, it is the responsibility of the supplier because supplier's goods are getting involved. So the supplier will be the person who will be responsible for generating the e-way bill. Good. So one question from Mr. Shivakumar is, I have a machine which is sent on rental basis to the customer. What is the amount I will mention, machine value or the rental value? Good question. So the movement is of the machinery. So you will sell it against what document? You will not raise the sale invoice immediately. So it will be through a delivery challan, correct? Because you will raise a rental invoice at the end of the month. But at the beginning of the month, you are transporting the machinery. So you will tell that it is on non-sale basis. So they will have a column whether it is supply or no supply. So we will mention no supply and tell that this is for rental basis, and you will mention the value of the machine itself because the value of the rent you may not know today. So you will mention the value of the machinery itself. That is no problem because that's not a sale. Okay, that's through a delivery challan. You are giving the machinery for rental purposes. So you will mention the value of the machinery and it is not a sale for today. So you'll mention as a non-sale basis. But this value, what you're mentioning, it will not go to your GST returns. It will reflect it, but your GST returns will be based on your actual rental value itself. So what is e-way bill? E-way bill is a compliance mechanism wherein by way of digital interface, the person causing the movement of goods. So who can cause the movement? Either the seller can cause or the receiver, the buyer can cause. So that's why they've said digital interface, the person causing the movement of goods uploads the relevant information prior to commencement of the movement of goods and generates e-way bill on the GST portal. Okay, so what is e-way bill? It's a compliance mechanism whereby digital interference, there is a digital interference because when you can raise a manual invoice, but e-way bill, you cannot raise it manually. You have to do it digitally online on the GST portal, which gives you access to e-way bill. Okay, so there is a digital interference where the person who is causing the movement of goods, which means either the seller or the buyer can upload the details. But when should this information be uploaded? Prior to commencement of the movement of goods and generate the e-way bill. E-way bill is an electronic document generated on the common portal. So for GST returns, we have gst.gov.in. For e-way bill, we have this website called ewaybillgst.gov.in. So once you enter the details, you're evidencing that there is a movement of goods which is happening. So what are the prerequisites for this? What are the requirements for you to generate an invoice, e-way bill? You should be a registered person. Because if you're not registered, you cannot raise a e-way bill. You have to be a registered person. And if the transporter is not registered, because transporter also is responsible to mention some details. And say if transporter is not registered, then it is mandatory for him to get enrolled on the e-way bill portal. He may not be registered, but since he's a transporter who is unregistered, but he takes care of the movement of the goods, he has to register himself on the e-way bill portal. Okay, before generation of the e-way bill to get a 15-digit unique transporter ID called as TRANSIN. So registered person will have his GST number, will log into the e-way bill portal and get a e-way bill login details from where he can generate a e-waybill. But for a transporter, if he is registered, fine, he will also have an e-waybill. If he is not registered, he will have to apply and get a separate number called as TRANSIN, Transporter Identification Number. So is it possible that in one transaction invoice, delivery challan and e-waybill all issued? Not possible generally. If there is one transaction, there'll be invoice and e-waybill or delivery challan and e-waybill. Can't be both. What are the benefits of e-waybill? Very simple. Firstly, no physical interference to pave way for physical interference to pave way for digital interference. Physical verification will go away and digital things will come in, wherein there is a elimination of state boundary checkposts. Firstly. Second, it will facilitate faster movement. Since there are no checkposts, it will have faster movement of goods. Third, improves the turnaround time of trucks and help the logistics industry also. So, firstly, our goods is getting stuck, so there is a delay. Even for the logistics industry, they'll have to keep the lorries wait. So for them also, there's a loss. Now they also can increase the more transactions because the movement or stoppage of the vehicles is very less. Then next benefit is enhances supply chain efficiency, because main supply chain, if you need something, the backbone for any FMCG product now is a good supply chain. Now, if the supply chain is getting stopped because of these GST hurdles, then the supply chain is getting affected. Now, because of this, since this is getting removed itself, the check post is getting removed, it will enhance the supply chain efficiency, faster movement of goods, single e-waybill across the country. You're moving from one state to another state, you don't have to have separate e-waybills. One e-waybill is sufficient. And it is easy to get generated online as well. Further, it reduces carbon footprints because you don't have to take a lot of prints. Just generate the e-waybill, mention the e-waybill number on your respective invoice. That is sufficient. The officer can use that number and check the status. And it is required for consignment value exceeding rupees 50,000. So up to 50,000, you don't need it. Above 50,000 itself, e-waybill will be required. Okay, so up to 50,000, e-waybill not required. Above 50,000, it is required. Will transporter be required to file GSTR 1 and 3B? No. That's why he's not getting a GST registration certificate number. He's getting a TRANSIN number. The TRANSIN number is only for transportation. He will not be required to file the monthly returns. He is only a person registered under e-waybill for the transportation. Even if there is a e-invoice, yes, e-invoice is on a different logic. E-waybill is on a different logic. Even if you have given the details and generated a e-invoice, still you will have to raise the e-waybill also. Yes, still there in some areas there are checkposts. You're right, Preeti. In some areas that is still there because it is very vulnerable that if there is no checkpost, people will still doing it. So some kind of, they don't call it as checkpost, they call it as GST squads, flying squads, which they still are following it. But practically, that is what is happening. Yeah, so all data what is auto-populated in e-invoice, no Hardik, that data will go to your e-waybill also. You have to check it and generate a e-waybill, and that data will go to your GSTR1 also. So when you file GSTR1 also, you'll see that the data is already there because you have mentioned the details in e-invoicing. And for you to generate e-waybill also, it will get interlinked and you don't have to enter all the data what you have entered. But for e-waybill, you have to require transporters details and all. So other details, what can get absorbed from the e-invoice, that will get transmitted, and Additional is the vehicle's number you will have to mention, and it will become faster to generate a e-way bill. Sir, in one transaction, a transporter and supplier both will issue an e-way bill? Yes. So what we will go through the details, we'll see that a e-way bill has two parts, part A and part B. Part A will be filled by the seller or the buyer, and part B has to be filled by the transporter because he will have the vehicle number. For generating e-way bill, separate registration required? Not registration. Normal GST registration is sufficient, but to have access to e-way portal, you have to give your GST number and generate a separate login ID. Okay, you don't have to take separate registration. With the same registration, you need to have a separate login ID. Now, if the transporter has not generated, good question, because transporter is required to generate part B. Now, if he is not registered, then there's no penalty as such. It is the responsibility of the supplier that he will have to mention the vehicle details. Because if the goods are getting caught, you cannot give an explanation saying, no, the transporter was not registered. The officer is not going to listen. He will tell that the primary responsibilities of the supplier, you have to ensure that the e-way bill, what is being generated, is accurate and correct. Can we generate e-way bill to unregistered person? Yes, you can. So if you are registered person, you are causing movement, right? So for every movement required, now if the recipient is unregistered, still you can select the recipient details and as unregistered, and you can raise a e-way bill. Yes, e-invoice are auto-populated in GST-1. If I have not generated e-invoice but generated e-way bill, then e-way bill data are auto-populated? No. E-way bill data will not be auto-populated in GST-1. Only e-invoice data will be auto-populated. अगर सप्लायर ने भी ई-वे बिल नहीं बनाया तो फिर वो जो आप गुड्स मूव कर रहे हो वो रिस्क के साथ मूव कर रहे हो, क्योंकि अगर रास्ते में किसी ऑफिसर ने रोक दिया और उसने ई-वे बिल पूछा और आपके पास नहीं है, तो फिर आपके गुड्स कॉन्फिस्केट कर दिए जाएंगी, सेइंग दैट आपने कंप्लायंस नहीं किया है, आपको पेनाल्टी पे करना पड़ेगा. Yes, even if the recipient is government, same process. If there is any error occurred in e-way bill, I'm really happy that you're asking really practical questions. If there is any error occurred in e-way bill, there is a time to cancel it. अगर आपने उस टाइम के अंदर कैंसिल कर दिया तो ठीक है, अगर कैंसिल नहीं किया तो then you can't do anything with that e-way bill. You have to generate a new e-way bill because it has a time limit. क्योंकि आपने मूव कर दिया, you have sent some goods and then you say no, I'm canceling it. So that's why e-way bill cancellation has a time limit. Within that 24 hours time limit, within 24 hours of generating e-way bill, you have to cancel it. If not, then you have to write a letter to the officer saying that I have wrongly generated it. Correct e-way bill I will raise subsequently. So you may have a two e-way bill. First one may not be get cancelled, but second one has to be proper there. Reduce carbon footprint. Yes, Sabha. That you don't have to take printouts of it. You don't have to waste papers and you don't have to waste printers on it. So that's why they're saying it will reduce the carbon footprint. E-invoicing cannot get cancelled. Yes, Hardik. E-invoice cannot get cancelled. E-way bill can get cancelled. Yes. Now, when do we generate it? When there is a movement of goods of consignment value exceeding 50,000 rupees. The value of the goods what you're transporting exceeds 50,000. In cases of what? In relation to supply, in relation to other than supply. If you're supplying something, definitely. If you're not supplying something, still you have to raise a e-way bill. Matlab, if you're doing only movement, right? Like from a branch office to a warehouse, there is no supply. It is within one state. They have taken one registration. There is no supply. So can they just move the goods freely? No. On that transaction, if they have one registration, like how we had read under the registration chapter, within a state, any transaction between the branches is not liable to GST. But should I raise e-way bill? Yes, still required. Correct. Still, it is required because there is no GST payable, but there is movement of goods. So you have to raise a e-way bill even when there is a transfer between two branches within a state, no GST, still e-way bill has to be generated. Yes. What happens in case the truck through which we supplied has broke down? You can update the e-way bill number. You can update the transporter's number, the lorry number in the e-way bill. That is possible. In relation to supply, in relation other than supply, and due to inward supply from an unregistered person. आप किसी unregistered person से buy कर रहे हो. Now unregistered person is a seller. Now he cannot generate a e-way bill, but you can generate it. So you can generate a e-way bill when you're buying something from an unregistered person. The registered person who causes movement of goods shall furnish the information relating to said goods as specified in Part A of e-way bill before commencement of such movement. Now, what information to be furnished? Information is to be furnished prior to commencement of the movement, and e-way bill has to be raised whether the movement is in relation to supply or movement other than supply. तो आप supply कर रहे हो या non supply कर रहे हो. Various instances could be there for non-supply. For all of those things, also e-way bill is required. So e-way bill is for movement only. Now we have said that whenever there's a movement of goods, the registered person who causes such movement has to generate the invoice. Now, who is the person who's causing the movement? If the supplier is registered and he undertakes to transport the goods. Second scenario, in case the recipient undertakes to transport or arrange the transport. And third case, in the case the goods are supplied by an unregistered supplier to a recipient. In these three scenarios, who causes the movement? First scenario, if the supplier is registered and he undertakes to transport of goods. So in that case, who is causing the movement? Supplier. Very good. So movement is caused by the supplier. Very nice. In case the recipient undertakes to transport or arrange the transport. In second scenario, where the recipient undertakes to transport, yes, recipient is the person who is causing the movement. So in second scenario, the movement will be caused by the recipient. So he will have to generate the e-way bill. Third scenario, in case the goods are supplied by an unregistered supplier to a recipient who is registered. Yes, in third scenario also, everyone is giving the correct answer. So the movement shall be said to be caused by the recipient. That is, if the recipient is unknown at the time of commencement of the movement of goods. Okay. So when you buy from an unregistered person, the recipient will be treated as a person who is causing the movement of goods. So again, the same scenario. Supply is made by a registered seller to a registered buyer. E-way either party may generate, right? Even though the primary responsibility is of the supplier, but if the receiver says, no, I will generate it, then you don't have to generate the same thing again. If the recipient agrees, then the recipient registered buyer can raise the e-way bill. Second scenario, registered seller and unregistered buyer or a foreign buyer. So in this case, supply is made by registered seller to an unregistered buyer. The registered seller to generate the e-way bill. Okay. And in third scenario, when there's an unregistered seller or a foreign seller and you are recipient, you are registered, supply is made by unregistered seller to a registered buyer, movement is said to be caused by the registered recipient and e-way bill is to be generated by the registered recipient. Clear? Okay. Now we said that e-way bill has to be raised when the consignment value is above 50,000 rupees. Now what is this consignment value? Is it the sale value or does it include taxes? Does it exclude whatever you want? Okay. So whether consignment value is more than 50,000, then you have to generate an e-way bill. Now, how do you calculate this 50,000? 50,000 is determined in accordance with the provisions of section 15. That is when you're raising an invoice, that is your transaction value. So if the transaction value is more than 50,000 rupees and it is declared in an invoice, a bill of supply or a delivery challan, as the case may be, issued in respect of the said consignment. When the value is declared in the invoice or bill of supply or delivery challan, and the value of this exceeds 50,000 rupees, then you have to generate the e-way bill. Now, this value will also include central tax, unitary tax, integrated tax, and cess, if any, in the document. So all your taxes also has to be included to keep that value of 50,000 rupees. Now, take for example, there is a goods, okay, which is valued at 42,000 rupees. Okay, on 42,000 rupees, you have added GST. Now, what is the value on which you will consider whether e-way bill is required or no? Whether it is 42,000 or a different value. Say 18% is the GST rate, 42,000 is the value of your goods. So, will you raise a e-way bill in this scenario or no? 42,000 is exclusive of GST. No. Why no? Why everybody saying no? Correct. Come up with the values. So 42,000 plus 18% makes it as 49,560. And since 49,560 is less than 50,000, e-way bill is not required to be generated. So if that same person who's charging 18%, he's selling goods worth 46,000 rupees, then will he be required to generate an e-way bill? Yes, in that case, it will be required because the consignment value, what has to be seen is the value of the goods, the transaction value plus taxes. Hamesha yaad rakhna, it's only for e-way bill, nowhere else. In e-way bill, you have to consider the value of the goods plus the taxes. it excludes the value of exempt supply of goods where the invoice is issued in respect of both exempt and taxable supply. जैसे एक इनवॉइस है उसमें 20,000 रुपीज इज एग्जेम्प्ट सप्लाई एंड 40,000 is taxable supplies. Both put together is 20 plus 40, 60,000 rupees. So will you raise an e-way bill for this? You will not raise e-way bill. Very nice. Good. Because the value of exempt supply is not to be included. Totally the invoice is for above 50,000 rupees. But when you exclude exempt supply, then the balance is less than 50,000. आपको ई-वे बिल जनरेट करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Yes. Distance range is also J9. We'll just come to that. Now, even if the value is less than 50,000, sometimes you have to raise a e-way bill. When is that? When there is a interstate transfer of goods by the principal to the job worker. So when you're transferring some goods from you're the principal, you're transferring goods to the job worker, there you will not see any value. Even if you're supplying goods worth 10,000 rupees, still you have to raise a e-way bill. When you are supplying it to a job worker, he has to do some job work and that person is outside the state, then interstate supply transfer of goods by principal to job worker, no value will be required. Any value, you have to raise an e-way bill. Then interstate transfer of handicraft goods. Somebody was asking on this. Yes, interstate transfer of handicraft goods by a person who is exempted from obtaining registration. If he's doing any interstate sale, he will be required to raise an e-way bill. Then the registered person or the transporter at his option, that is voluntary, they can raise an e-way bill even if the value is 50,000 rupees. The statutory limit is 50,000. If you are supplying something below 50,000 and you still you want to raise an e-way bill, you can do it. Yes, Nitin, you got your answer? Okay. Now, somebody was asking on what happens in bill to ship to. Bill to ship to case, what will happen? Supplier is in Tamil Nadu. He is billing it to B and shipping it to C. So, in this case, e-way bill will be generated by whom? E-way bill will be for movement of goods. The supplier, where the goods are getting shipped, for that he will raise a e-way bill. In the e-way bill also, he can mention what is the billing address and what is the shipping address. So billing address, he will mention Gurgaon, customer B, and shipping address, he will mention Gujarat, customer C. In this case, there are two supplies. That supplier, Tamil Nadu to customer C, he will raise invoice to whom? Correct. In intrastate value, Hardik, if it is below 50,000, e-way bill will not be required. If it is more than 50,000, then even intrastate e-way bill will be required. Not to customer C. Bill will be raised by the supplier Mahi to customer B because it's a bill to ship to transaction. So I will bill to Gurgaon and ship to Gujarat, which is C. So my invoice will be B and delivery challan will be to C. Based on that delivery challan and that invoice, I can tell that I am raising invoice to B but delivering to C. And then for this moment, one e-way bill will be required. E-way bill can be generated in this case either by the supplier or the customer B, because basis the instruction of customer B, the supplier is delivering it to customer C. So either customer B or the supplier can raise the e-way bill. Now for invoice from B to C, there is no movement. There is only a second invoice which has to be raised. So for that, again, e-way bill will not be required because there's no movement. For this transaction, two invoices will be raised, but only one e-way bill will be raised. E-way bill is raised to customer C. Correct. E-way bill will be raised from bill to bill from supplier and ship to will be customer C. So it will be raised to customer C and the movement will happen from supplier that is in Tamil Nadu to customer C in Gujarat itself. Yeah. Bill to ship to transaction. Again, bill to is happening to Maruti traders and ship to is happening to Tamil Nadu. In this case, option 1, e-way bill can be raised either by Ganesh traders or option 2, it can be raised by Maruti traders. Similar scenario, if it is from one state to another state, either the e-way bill can be raised by Ganesh traders or by Maruti traders. E-way bill to prime hardware. E-way bill to prime hardware. Will there be any one of the two? Didn't understand. Movement is one, right? So for that movement, either Ganesh traders can raise the e-way bill or Maruti traders can raise the e-way bill. Correct. E-way bill to ultimately prime hardware will be there by any one of the two, either Ganesh or Maruti. Like Maruti traders make e-way bill. Maruti traders will make e-way bill to ship to prime traders. Correct. That's all. Clear? Even in case of a bill to ship to, there are two supplies, but one e-way bill will be there because there is only one movement. Okay, now e-way bill, how does it look? E-way bill looks like this, that you will have part A and part B. So part A will have the following details: GSTN of the supplier, place of supply, GSTN of the recipient, place of delivery, document number, document date, value of goods, HSN codes, reason for the transportation. GSTN of the supplier, place of supply, place of dispatch, right? GSTN number of the supply can be different, place of dispatch can be different. GSTN of the recipient can be different, place of delivery can be different. Document number, that is if it's an invoice, invoice number, if it's a delivery challan number, and the document's date, value of the goods, HSN. Now, e-way bill is only for goods, not for services. So it is for any movement of goods, you have to raise a e-way bill. Now, this is what you will be furnished by the registered person when it is all this information is given in part A. Once you upload the details in part A, you go to the transporter. Transporter will have to mention the details in part B to be furnished by the person who is transporting the goods. If it's a transporter, he has to ensure. If you yourself are using your vehicle and transporting it, then part B also you will enter. Part B will have details like vehicle number and transporter document number. These are the only the details which the transporter will be required. So in job worker case, we have to raise it through delivery challenge because you are giving goods, say, worth 1 lakh rupees. Now, is it sale? It is not a sale, right? So you will not raise an invoice, you will only raise a delivery challenge because it is a movement of goods for job work purposes. So you will raise a debit note for the value of the goods. Once the job work completes his works and gives it back, then he will raise an invoice. Correct? So in both the cases, there are two movements. So for that movements, e-waybill will be required, but invoice will not be raised for the movement from principal to the job worker. Value of goods includes tax. Yes, yes. There is no separate column. Value of the goods will include the taxes also. Right. What is the information to be furnished in Part A by the transporter on an authorization received from such registered person? Now, if you do not enter it and you authorize the transporter to enter Part A also, then he can also enter it. Right? Ultimately, the e-way bill has to be generated. Either the supplier generates it or he gives the authorization to the transporter and the transporter can put the details. By the e-commerce operator or a courier agency where the goods to be transported are supplied through such an e-commerce operator or a courier agency on an authorization received from the consignor. In both the cases, the e-commerce operator or the courier agency can generate it. Once the goods are ready and the transporter details are known, the user can enter Part B details. So if the transporter says that I will transport it through XYZ truck number, then that number you can mention and generate it. You yourself can generate the Part B or the transporter can generate it, but it is always suggested that if the transporter makes any mistake, so you will be held responsible for it. So if you can get the details, then get those details and generate the e-way bill. And e-way bill will be complete or the generation will be possible only when the details in Part B are mentioned. If you don't mention any details in Part B, then you cannot generate it. So e-way bill can be generated only after entering the data in Part B. Yes. There is a risk by generating by transporter. Yes, no, because if instead of mentioning the correct vehicle number, he mentions wrong vehicle number and the goods are being intercepted, then the officer will question saying that why have you mentioned the wrong vehicle number? Correct? That's why it is better that you itself generate it. Who is mandatory required to generate? When the goods are transported by a registered person who is causing movement of goods, either by the supplier or recipient. When the goods, second scenario is when the goods is handed over to the transporter by road and the transporter is moving goods, is causing movement. That is, you are handing over the goods to the transporter and transporter is moving the goods, then either registered person or the transporter, and goods is being transported by air, vessel or train, then the registered person itself will mention the details. The railway authorities, they will not generate the e-label. It will be the person, either the supplier or the recipient, who can raise the e-label. Clear till here? Very nice. Okay. So e-waybill when part B is not mandatory. Okay, now we saw that e-waybill itself is not mandatory if it is 50,000, but in some cases it becomes essential. Now part B is sometimes not mandatory when the e-waybill may not be furnished where the goods are transported for a distance up to 50 kilometers within the state from the place of business to the consignor to the place of the transporter. Now you have to give the goods to the transporter. Now you are moving in your own vehicle, but actual movement will happen by the transporter's vehicle. That vehicle number is not yet known. So if that distance is up to 50 kilometers, then it's fine. And again, from the place of the transporter, you are getting it from your place. There also, it should be within the same state and the distance bit should be less than 50 kilometers, then you don't have to generate the part B. Yes. Sir, what can we do in case where we transport goods from the factory to the transporter office worth 1 lakh? Still, we have to raise the e-way bill. This is the point, right? Here, they have not set any value limit. If you are moving from your place to the transporter's place, okay? From your factory to your transporter place, the value is 1 lakh rupees. You will generate part A, but you will not generate the part B. Distance is calculated from the transporter. The distance, right? Distance will have two things, start and end. So the distance will be from your place to the transporter's place. And at the receiving end, from the transporter's location to your factory. The distance will be the actual distance which has to be calculated. Supplier A, he is at this place. Okay. Now from here, you have to move the goods to the transporter place. Okay. This is supplier A's place. This is transporter B's place. Now this distance, if it is 50 kilometers, less than 50 kilometers, then you will only generate part A and you will not generate part B once the goods reach the transporters, and when the actual transportation happens, their part B will be filled in and e-way bill will be generated. Okay, this is from the supplier's perspective. Reverse, now transporter has gone to the destination, but he's not gone to the door of the receiver. He is there in his godown, or his place where his goods are generally getting stored. Now, from transporter T place, from that place till the receiver, okay, receiver's place. Now, if this is also less than 50 kilometers, then e-way bill will not have part B, it will have only part A. Understood? Sai Kiran sir, even if there is a traffic, how can the distance go beyond 50 kilometers? Distance is distance. It is not measured on the, it is not measured based on your movement of goods or based on the time. It is based on the distance. So from here, from I to T, if it is 50 kilometers, if there is a traffic, will it change? It will still be same. The distance will be the distance from I to T itself. That will not change. Hardik, speed is distance by time. Don't reverse that by speed and time, then your distance will get reduced. Okay, that's to calculate, but effectively, your distance is the fixed distance. Correct. Supplier A से transporter. Now, when you're supplying something, आपको transporter को देना पड़ेगा ना. Sometimes transporters don't come to your place. You have to go to your transporter's place. Then in that scenario, they are saying don't generate the e-way bill completely. आप part A enter करके रखिए. Correct. From T to recipient, because आपका e-way bill Abhishek will be up to the transporter's place. Correct. So from transporter's place to R, then you don't have to generate the part B. Correct. If any one of the condition is met, then part B is not mandatory. Very right. If the distance between transporter and supplier is less than 50 kilometers, but between transporter and recipient is 60 kilometers, then second case, both part is generated by the recipient or transporter, right? So if it is more than 50 kilometers, then आपको whatever vehicle you're using, उसका details mention करके आपको separate e-way bill raise करना पड़ेगा. No, this will not apply for interstate case, Manoj. It will apply only in case of within the state. Within the state, right? We have mentioned it here, within the state. ठीक है. How to calculate the approximate kilometers? Google से देखिए आप. From your place to my place, how much is the kilometers? आपको पता चल जाएगा वहाँ पे. If it exceeds 50 kilometers, transporter के केस में, तो transporter के लिए भी and recipient के लिए भी एक ही e-way bill? Yes, दोनों के लिए एक ही e-way bill है. नहीं, दो हो जाएगा ना, because you are moving goods from supplier to the recipient place, one e-way bill. From the transporter's place against to the recipient's location, you have to generate another e-way bill. If a supplier in state A wants to deliver the goods to different place of state B, then he has to generate e-way bill separately for each place he want to deliver. If there are multiple consignments, each consignment will have one document. Each document will have each e-way bill. So you cannot merge multiple documents in one e-way bill. You have to have one invoice, one e-way bill. Because in one invoice, you will have one delivery location. You cannot have multiple delivery location in one invoice. Transfer of goods from one conveyance to another. What happens in case of breakage? Somebody was asking this. There is a repair work. There's a puncture of the vehicle. Then what do we do? In that case, the transporter's vehicle has started movement, and on its way, the vehicle has got repaired and needs a day's time for repair. So what happens if multiple conveyance are involved, right? Various scenarios can happen. In such a case, the consignor or the recipient or the transporter can update the vehicle number in part B of the e-way bill. As soon as you get to know that this vehicle is halted, you have to give another vehicle. Then that other vehicle's number you have to update in your e-way bill. Of course, it has to be updated within the validity period. If that is not updated, then you cannot update it. There is some validity period. Within that validity period, you can update the vehicle details. How to deal with specific situations when there are multiple conveyance against a single invoice. Issue delivery challan against each conveyance. And then number of e-way bills to be generated is number of delivery challans. From point A to point B, one delivery challan. From point B to point C, different delivery challan. For each delivery challan, you will raise a separate e-way bill. That is when there are multiple conveyance. But when there is a vehicle breakdown, supplier uses his own vehicle, then the supplier can update the vehicle details. आपने आपके ट्रक से भेजा है और आपको पता है कि ये ट्रक खराब हो गया, अब दूसरे ट्रक को लेंगे, तो you know the details, so you can update the details in part B. But supplier is handed over the goods to a goods transport agency. Then the transporter will update the vehicle details in part B, and the transporter may reassign to another transporter. Now, the transporter has control in state A. In state B, the vehicle has got halted. It's got repaired. Now, he has called another transporter to do it because he cannot go to that state now. Because by the time he goes, a lot of time will get wasted. So there will be another transporter who is already there. He will discuss with him and he will assign this e-way bill to him. And this assigned transporter will update the details in part B. Okay? So in case of vehicle breakdown, either the supplier, if he has generated the part B, or the transporter, if he has generated the part B, he will put the new vehicle details. And if he does not have any vehicle there, then he can assign it because each transporter will have a transit number. He can assign it to another transporter. That transporter who is giving the vehicle, he will mention the part B details there. Yes, very true. Qua invoice e-way bill will be raised. Very nice. Yes. Manoj, there is a time limit to update. We'll just see in the next slide what is the time limit for that. Assigning e-way bill number. If part A is furnished by the consignor, and if you have assigned it to another transporter, then the transporter can do the assignment. In scenario where the details of the conveyance is updated by the transporter itself, and now he is assigning it to another transporter, then the consignor or the recipient shall not be allowed to reassign, because once you assign this to me, then you cannot assign it to any third person. So if you have assigned it to me, I will have to assign it to anybody. That is what the slide is saying. When the assigning of e-way bill number will happen, मतलब जो details update करना है जिसके पास मैंने दिया है, if you have given me, then you can update and I can update. Now, if I have given it to somebody, then you cannot update it. I can update it or the other person can update it. That is the control mechanism. If an assigned transporter is not registered, then supplier can update. See, transporter need not be registered. Transporter needs to only have a transit number. If he does not have that also, then supplier can update. Now, if transporter has a transit number, then he will update it. When and who should generate the e-way bill? This is just for sellers. When e-way bill is not necessary, those scenarios are there. But we have to look from a transporter's perspective. Goods have handed over to the transporter or a GTA with part A of the e-way bill filled. Then the transporter will fill vehicle details and generate the e-way bill. With the e-way bill generated, can update the vehicle number also. The assigned transporter can also reassign another transporter who in turn will update the vehicle number. So who has the control on part B? They are the person who can change it or the person to whom they are giving it. Once I've given it to somebody and that person is assigned it to somebody else, then the first person will not have any control, is what this is saying. So if I assign goods to A, then I and A can change. And as and when A assigned to B, then A and B has the power, I will lose control. Very good, very good, very rightly put. Now there is something called as a consolidated e-waybill. You have generated an e-waybill. Now, transporter has one truck. Now I have raised a e-waybill, given him goods. There are other suppliers also who have raised e-waybill and given him the goods. Now he will get lost with so many e-waybills. So what he can do is he can generate a consolidated e-waybill. A consolidated e-waybill in form GST EWB2, where multiple consignments are intended to be transported in one conveyance. But there is a limitation because it's only for ease. So it cannot replace the validity period or other things of the e-waybill. Consolidated e-waybill allows the transporter to carry a single document instead of a separate document. That's the only purpose. A user should have all the e-waybill numbers of the consignments which the transporter shall transport. So you should have control whether your e-waybill is there under the e-waybill too. If any consignment does not have e-waybill and the value is more than 50,000, the transporter has to generate e-waybill, because each consignment, okay, each invoice wise is what is a e-waybill. Each consignment is important. If each consignment is there for a value of 50,000 rupees, then you have to raise a e-waybill. And if there are some goods in one conveyance and e-waybill is not being generated, then the transporter will have to generate it. This is very important. Consolidated e-waybill does not have any independent validity period. Okay. Now, each e-waybill has a validity period of say 1 day or 2 days based on the distance of the kilometer. Now, if my my e-waybill is valid for 1 year, 1 day, another supplier's e-waybill is valid for 2 days. So it doesn't mean that once a consolidated e-waybill is generated, everybody's will get extended to 2 days. No. Each e-waybill, each validity of individual e-waybill will continue to hold. E-waybill 2 is only for ease of reference that the transporter can carry one document. That's what this is saying. Consolidated e-waybill does not have independent validity period. The validity period of individual consignment will still have to be considered. And e-waybill, EWB2, e-waybill 2 is optional and it is not mandatory. Only if the transporter wants, he can generate it. Otherwise, he can take multiples e-waybill 01 itself. Other attributes, data submitted on e-waybill can be used to generate data for GST returns. This data can be used for generating of GSTR1 returns. And cancellation of e-waybills, very important. Within what time can I cancel it? Once you generate it, within 24 hours, you can cancel it. Only if the goods are not transported or goods are not verified in transit. आपने अभी रेज किया है, 2 घंटे के बाद आपने goods किसी ने वेरीफाई कर दिया है. It's been okay, they've verified that everything is correct. Now you want to cancel it, you cannot. Because it's been verified, right? So verification is an important aspect. Once it is verified, you cannot cancel the e-waybill. And if you are not transporting, only then, if you're transported, then you cannot cancel it. Editing option is not there in e-waybill. कि आपने कुछ कर दिया उसको edit कर सकते हैं नहीं. Like how our GSTR 3B returns cannot be edited. Similarly, e-waybill also cannot be edited. Acceptance of e-waybill, it is deemed to be accepted. So I supply goods to you. I will raise a e-waybill. Should you on your system go and click accept? Not required. It is deemed to be accepted unless within 72 hours you reject it. So if you reject it, once I generate it and it's available to you, you can say that no, it is not my consignment within 72 hours or at the time of delivery of the goods, whichever is earlier, not whichever is later. Because whichever is later means once it comes to you, then you will reject it. That's not possible. Either 72 hours or time of delivery, whichever is earlier. So I am supplying goods to A. By mistake, if I mention B's details, then it will be treated that B has received the goods. So if the B doesn't do any action, then that will become correct. So I will have to do what? I will have to cancel that e-way bill within 24 hours. If 24 hours has been lapsed, I cannot cancel it. Then I have to raise a new e-way bill for movement of goods from me to A. Got it? So that is how the movement and the e-way bill has to be considered. Now, validity period, very important. The validity period of the e-way bill is up to 20 kilometers one day, above 20 kilometers one additional day. But this is not for regular transport vehicles. This is for over-dimensional and multimodal shipment having one leg in ship. So let us understand what is normal cargo. If you're moving through your normal cargo, which is other than over-dimensional cargo, then up to 200 kilometers, one day validity. Okay. For 200 kilometers, you can use one day. You can transfer 200 kilometers, very much sufficient. Correct. Even if a truck goes at the speed of 30, 40 kilometers, within 5 hours, it can get delivered. So government is giving you full one day. So up to 200 kilometers distance, where the distance from the sender to the receiver, that has to be considered. If that distance is 200 kilometers, validity period is one day. If the distance is over 200 kilometers, for every 200 extra kilometers, say it is 450 kilometers. So you'll get 200 plus 200 plus 50. You'll get 3 days validity period. Okay. For every 200 kilometers or part thereof. So if it is for 250 kilometers, the validity will be how many days? 2 days. Correct. It will be 2 days for 250 kilometers, like how it is 3 days for 450 kilometers, up to 200 kilometers, one day, and for every additional kilometer up to the next 200, you'll get one additional day. That is for normal vehicle. Now, there is something called as over-dimensional cargo, which has been defined under the Motor Vehicles Act. They have defined that when the vehicle is over-dimensional, then it cannot go at the same speed as a normal vehicle. So there they have reduced it to 20 kilometers one day, up to 20 kilometers one day, because they may have to stop it. They have to do a lot of things. So for over-dimensional cargo and multimodal shipment, where you are using multiple modes of transportation, and in one leg there is a involvement of sea also, then total distance you have to calculate and you will get one day validity for up to 20 kilometers. MMT is multimodal transportation. We have said here, no, multimodal shipment, that is the MMT. One leg means even one part. So you are transporting through from here to the ship through the road, then the ship, from there again a train. So various legs are involved, various modes are involved. One leg is through ship, that is called as one leg. Then one of the modes is a ship, that is called as one leg. Okay, so with this slide, we'll take a break and we'll catch in another 10 minutes time. We'll see you back at 4 o'clock. Yes. So this is the validity period within which your goods has to get reached. If your goods are getting delivered after this period, it means that, and the officer has intercepted it, it will mean that you're moving the goods without an e-waybill. Okay. So the validity of the e-waybill is very crucial. If you are moving any goods, ensure that it reaches the destination within this period, and they've given sufficient time. And they've given other procedures also, right? That if the vehicle breaks down and anything, you can assign it to another vehicle. So there cannot be any leeway in terms of crossing this limit. Now, how do you calculate this e-waybill period? This is very important. We have said that 1 day, right? Validity period from the relevant date. Now, where is the relevant date? We have mentioned here that validity period from the relevant date. From that relevant date, 1 day and one additional day, which means relevant date means the date on which the e-waybill has been generated, and the period of validity shall be counted from the time at which the e-waybill has been generated, and each day shall be counted as the period expiring at midnight of the day immediately following the day of the generation of the e-waybill. The validity of the e-waybill starts when first entry is made in part B. So once you enter in part A, the validity period will not start. Once you enter the details in part B and generate the e-waybill, that is when the validity period starts. And what is mentioned here, each day, overnight and all, we'll explain it through an example. E-waybill is generated on the 1st of April at 5 p.m. for transportation of cargo, which will cover a distance of 90 kilometers. The validity period we know is 1 day because it is up to 200 kilometers. It's a normal conveyance. So in that case, e-waybill will be valid for 1 day. So will it expire on 1st? No. The validity period itself starts from the midnight. Okay, so it starts from the 1st, so it will end on the 2nd April. So effectively, you're getting 2 days. If you have generated the e-waybill on 5 p.m., it's not that on the 1st April overnight only it has to get delivered. The validity period will be 1 day, and the validity period, okay, shall be counted period expiring at the midnight of the day immediately following the day. So 1 day starts at 12 p.m. on 1st. So till midnight of 2nd, the e-waybill will be valid. If it is for a distance of 190 kilometers, still it is April 2nd, right? Because 90 or 190, both are within 200 kilometers bracket. Both will have the validity of 2nd April. In this third scenario, if I've generated the e-waybill at just 2 minutes before the midnight, at 2 minutes before the midnight on the 14th, the first day ends on 12th midnight on 15th, and second day ends on 12th midnight of the 16th. So what does this mean? The earlier you raise the e-waybill, you will get more time. So if you raise the e-waybill at 6 a.m., you will get that day and you will get the subsequent day also, because they cannot time block it. That's why they've said 1 day, not in terms of hours, in terms of a complete day. If you generate the e-waybill today, if you generate in the morning, then you will get time for the full day. If you generate in the evening, you will get time only for the rest of the day. So to keep it uniformity, they've said 1 day would start from the end of the midnight of the day when you generate the e-waybill. Clear? So if it is generated on 1st April 5 p.m., it will be valid till 11:59 p.m. on April 2nd. Correct. 11:59 p.m. on the 2nd. Right. Any other example? Okay. I will ask you a question. You give me the validity period. That will be better. e-way bill generated on what is today? Today is 2nd January 2025. Okay. What is the time now? Around 4 p.m. Now, distance is 250 kilometers. Okay. Now, what will be the validity period of this e-way bill? First, 2nd January of generated, and this is 250 kilometers. So 2 days. So it will not start from 2nd, it will start on 3rd and 4th. So till midnight of 4th. Correct? It is valid till 4th January. Not 3rd. Somebody is saying 4th, 3rd. It is not 3rd. It is 4th January 2025, 11:59 p.m. or say 12 midnight. Midnight will be better. Clear? Now, if the same thing I have generated on 2nd January at 6 a.m. for a distance of 250 kilometers, what is the validity period in that case? People who have said 3rd January, be careful. It is not 3rd January. Bhumika is saying now in this case it is 3rd January. How can it be 3rd January? Fourth midnight, same as first case. Correct? So it will be same 4th January. That is what I'm trying to explain here, that if you generate the e-way bill soon, you will get extra time. Okay. Now, generated on 2nd January at 12 p.m. for 270 or okay, 450 kilometers. Three days, correct? 5th January till 5th January because 2nd, 450 means 3 days. 3rd, 4th, 5th. Till 5th you can transport it. Now, same scenario. I have generated on 3rd January at 12:01 a.m. for 450 kilometers. This will be valid for which date? Neeru is saying 5th January. Nitin is saying 5th January. How can it be 5th? It is 3 days. Correct. It is 3 days itself. So 3rd also you will get. 4th, 5th and 6th. It will be till 6th January. 12th January. On 3rd January 12:1 a.m. means what? When the 3rd starts, that is at the midnight, and when the officially 3rd has started, that time I have generated. So I will get the 3rd complete day, 4th, 5th and 6th. So it will be 6th January 2025 till 12 midnight. It's 00.01 a.m., right? The sooner the time, the extra time we get. Correct. Exactly. That's the point on which I'm trying to make. Clear? How do you calculate the e-waybill validity period now? Awesome. Extension of validity period. If the validity period, you are not supposed to move the goods. If the validity is complete, you should not move the goods. However, the validity period can be extended by the commissioner in certain cases by notification. Only the commissioner can say, okay, there is a COVID, or now there is some maintenance actually going on. And they've said that all the e-waybills can be generated later on. So when a specific notification is given by the commissioner, in such cases, the validity period can be extended. However, the transporter can extend it in exceptional cases when natural calamity, law and order, there is some strike going on, some earthquake happening, accident of the conveyance. With reason of extension needs to be explained. The validity may be extended within 8 hours from the time of expiry. If the validity period is ending today, 8 hours before that, he can extend it. Only the transporter, in genuine cases, he can extend it. Other aspects on e-waybill is not valid for movement of goods without vehicle number on it. There has to be a vehicle number. If there is a mistake, then what do you do? Incorrect or wrong entry in the e-waybill, then it cannot be edited. Only option is cancellation within 24 hours and generate a new one. E-waybill may be updated with vehicle number any number of times. First vehicle got punctured, you got another vehicle, your luck was so bad that vehicle also got repaired, it broke down, you have to go for third vehicle, no problem, no limitation, you can update the vehicle number any number of times. However, the latest vehicle number should be available. ऐसा नहीं कि sir, I've got this vehicle, but I have the old e-waybill number itself, I've not updated it. It will be treated as invalid. Latest vehicle should be there when the officer checks it. If multiple invoices are issued by the supplier to the recipient, then each invoice, one e-waybill is to be generated. The crux of the point 5 is each invoice, each e-waybill. The consolidated e-waybill, what we said, you cannot generate it. Only the transporter can generate it for his ease. Then e-waybill generated in one state is valid in another state. I am transporting goods from Karnataka to Delhi. It will move from Karnataka, it will reach Andhra Pradesh to Maharashtra to Haryana, and then it will reach Delhi. For each state, I don't have to generate a separate e-waybill. One e-waybill can be checked by all the officers on the way. E-waybill, when it is not required, these are specific goods for which e-waybill is not required. Okay, these are just general list which you may have to remember it. Also, e-waybill is not required in specific cases. Non-motorized conveyance, transportation from the port to inland container port. Matlab, when you import something, you have to import it through a customs port. From customs port, it can go to a land port. That's called as inland container port. That is also a customs bonded area itself. So when any movement is happening from there to the ICD, which is called as inland container depot, then e-waybill is not required because that is also still customs area. It's not cleared. It is not cleared for consumption. So that movement is from one customs to another customs. E-waybill not required. Movement of goods within notified areas. Any notification they give, then in that case, alcoholic liquor for human consumption, petroleum products, on that also e-waybill not required, where the supply of goods is treated as no supply under Schedule 3, heavy water, nuclear fuels, defense goods, empty cargo containers, these things will not require. Last is very important, place of supply of a consignor to weigh bridge. If the weighing, you have to weigh, no, so lorry, how much is the weight? When you empty it, when you dump the goods, what is the weight? The differential will be the weight of the goods. So if you have to send it to a weigh bridge and that weigh bridge is up to 20 kilometers, then also not required, but you have to give a delivery challan along with the movement. Okay. What are the documents you have to carry along? Invoice, of course, what we had said, invoice, bill of supply or delivery challan. Then e-waybill in physical form or in number or in RFID. What is RFID? Like when you go through these vehicles have a technology called as RFID. In that itself, the number can be embedded. If e-invoice is applicable to the taxpayer, then the QR code having the embedded, like there are two things. One is invoice, then second is e-invoice, and then third is e-waybill. Now, instead of invoice, some cases you will have to generate a e-invoice. That is when your turnover is more than 5 crores, you will generate a e-invoice. Now, when you generate a e-invoice, a QR code gets generated. Now, if that QR code is having a embedded IRN that will have the e-waybill number, okay, then IRN may be produced instead of the physical invoice. Okay, the advantage of e-invoice is that once you generate the IRN, that is equivalent to having an invoice because you cannot generate the IRN unless you give all your invoice details. So if you do not have e-invoice applicability, give the physical invoice. If e-invoice is applicable to you, then you give the e-invoice or the IRN number of the e-invoice. Of course, along with the e-waybill. Okay. Now, what happens when the officer holds you there at the check post, which is or at least at some borders? He will have to give you a summary report within 24 hours of inspection. It's not that he can hold the goods and just loiter around or sleep away. Within 24 hours, he has to give you a summary report of the inspection and final report. First is he should give a summary report saying that, okay, there is some discrepancy. I have to do a further investigation. That will be a summary report. After he gives a summary report, he has to give a final report. That final report has to be given within 3 days of the inspection. Now, in this case, he's really busy, not happening. He can further extend it to 3 days. So 3 plus 3, 6 days, without beyond which he cannot hold the conveyance beyond it. तो जो भी लॉरी होल्ड करता है वो 3 दिन के अंदर उसको रिलीज करना पड़ेगा. When physical verification is done at one place in one state, no further verification can be done in the same state. Moving goods from North Karnataka to South Karnataka, 10 चेक पोस्ट आएंगे, हर चेक पोस्ट वाला चेक करता रहेगा, नॉट परमिटेड. एक चेक पोस्ट वाले ने चेक कर दिया, ग्रीन सिग्नल दे दिया, बाकी सबको वही आपको दिखाना है. यू डोंट हैव टू गेट योर गुड्स इंस्पेक्टेड इन अ स्टेट. फ्रॉम वन स्टेट टू अनदर स्टेट इफ इट्स गॉन, there can be a separate inspection, but within the state, no further inspection. But if they have received any specific information saying that no, he's got a green signal, but there is a evasion of tax, if they have a proper evidence, then they can do a verification within the same state again. Final report is not part B. Part A, part B is of the e-waybill. Final report is their specific report, which they call as INS1, separate report which they give. Okay, that is a separate report, not part B. MOV report is what they call MOV1, MOV2, MOV9 is the final report which they give. That is called as the final report. Now sometimes restriction is there in furnishing of part A, मतलब आपको e-way bill generate करने के लिए देगा ही नहीं. If you are non-compliant, then your e-way bill will be blocked. What are those scenarios? Person paying tax under composition scheme has not furnished statement of payment for 2 consecutive quarters. If you are a composition taxpayer for 2 consecutive periods, you have not filed your returns, then it will be get blocked. If you're a regular taxpayer and you have not filed your returns for 2 tax periods, because आप किसी में भी monthly filers or quarterly filers हैं, whichever 2 returns which is applicable for you, you are not filed, then e-way bill will be blocked. A person paying tax under regular scheme has not furnished GSTR1. So first it was GSTR3B itself. Now GSTR1 also is included. If you have not filed your GSTR1 for 2 months or quarters, then also e-way bill will be blocked. A person whose registration is suspended, he cannot. However, a commissioner can allow furnishing of the said information in Part A if he grants the permission. So basically, if you have not filed your returns, either composition or regular, for a 2 consecutive quarters or 2 consecutive monthly returns, then your e-way bill will be blocked. If for some genuine reason you go to the commissioner and request him and if he permits, then only e-way bill will be released for you. Now, e-way bill blocking would mean that e-way bill will be blocked for raising but not for entering details as a recipient. Now, I am a buyer. I am not able to sell because my e-way bill is being blocked. But that doesn't mean that from somebody whom I'm buying, they cannot enter my details. They can enter my details, but I cannot generate an e-way bill for my sales. So e-way bill will be blocked for raising a e-way bill, but not for being entered as a recipient. When supplier is supplying and my registration is blocked because I've not furnished the return, still e-way bill will be generated because I'm a recipient and not a supplier. 2 tax periods means if you're a monthly taxpayer, then 2 months. If you're a quarterly taxpayer, then 2 quarters. So there is something called as QRMP scheme, right? Quarterly returns, monthly payment. For them, they will file the returns quarterly. So unke 2 quarter ke returns, if it is not filed, that is 2 tax periods. And who are having high turnover, they cannot go for QRMP scheme. They will go for monthly scheme. For them, if any 2 monthly returns, consecutive monthly return has not been filed, then their e-way bill will be blocked. HSN code is mandatory. HSN code, yes, all those details in the information requirement, you just mentioned value of supply and other things. So HSN is not mandatory. Annual turnover more than 5 crores, then you cannot go for QRMP scheme. Now, if the vehicle is detained, intercepted and detained for more than 30 minutes, then the transporter may upload the said information regarding detention. Any detention, that is any holding, cannot happen more than 30 minutes. If your goods is being held more than 30 minutes, the officer has to take some action, either tell him to hold it or give you a show cause notice, or you can upload information saying that my goods have been held more than 30 minutes. Permission for allowing to use e-way bill can be given on request by the commissioner. That is, when your thing is blocked, then you can request to the commissioner for allowing you to raise the e-way bill, saying that, okay, I don't have funds, I will file it later on, or whatever reasons you give. Based on that, if the commissioner is convinced, then he will allow you to raise a e-way bill without any filing of your previous returns also. But he'll give some conditions saying that, okay, I will allow you to raise a e-way bill, but within 10 days, you have to file your returns, something like that. Because the main objective of e-way bill is that your business will get paralyzed. Without e-way bill, if you sell something, right, then what happens? On the way, when any conveyance is being held or any conveyance has been stopped, they will detain it and they will levy a penalty. saying that the condition is any movement of goods has to happen with the e-way bill. Now you are moving the goods without e-way bill, then you're liable for confiscation, pay penalty, and get the goods cleared. So we've seen practically a lot of cases on this, that simple mistakes like transportation vehicle number is KA038523. So instead of mentioning 8523, they mentioned 8532. For that reason also goods have been held. Sometimes I am transporting the goods, but at the time when the officer asks the lorry person, give me the invoice, he is not able to give. Even though I've given it to him, but he is not able to give. For that also, goods have been confiscated. Then what happens? They will issue a show cause notice within 1 day. They will have to give within 3 days, the time limit is there, right? To give the final order. They will quickly give the order. I have to pay penalty of 200% of the tax value, get the goods cleared, and then proceed with my business. So that's why e-way bill is very critical for compliance purposes. For imported goods, the person who carry the goods from the port to his principal place of business, he has to generate e-way bill. Yes, he will have to generate, because the person who is supplying the goods is not registered. So the person who is receiving, you are causing the movement of the goods, right? You are the person who causes the movement of the goods has to generate the e-way bill. So you are the person who was causing the movement, because supplier is nowhere into the picture. He supplied and his work is completed. So you are causing the movement of goods for clearing it. So you have to raise the e-way bill. Blocking of e-way bill हिंदी में explain कर दीजिए. Okay, just restriction on furnishing of information. This is a blocking of e-way bill. मतलब यहाँ पे क्या कहा है, थोड़े लोग जो कंप्लायंट नहीं है जीएसटी रिटर्न से, उनका ई-वे बिल ब्लॉक कर दिया जाएगा. कब? जब आप कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम में हो. ठीक है, आप कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम में हो और आपने आपका रिटर्न फाइल नहीं किया है. सो दिस इज फॉर अ कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम पर्सन, कि आप कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम में हो और आपने कॉम्पोजिशन स्कीम को क्या फाइल करना पड़ता है, साल का एक रिटर्न फाइल करना पड़ता है. ठीक है, लेकिन उसको पेमेंट करना पड़ता है क्वार्टरली. तो उसने दो कंजिक्यूटिव क्वार्टर्स, दो कंजिक्यूटिव मतलब कंटिन्यूस क्वार्टर्स, दो क्वार्टर्स के लिए उसने पेमेंट नहीं किया है, तो उसका ई वे बिल ब्लॉक हो जाएगा. सेकेंड सिनारियो है जब अ पर्सन पेइंग टैक्स अंडर रेगुलर स्कीम, और रेगुलर स्कीम में है लेकिन उसने जीएसटीआर 3B रिटर्न्स 2 पीरियड के लिए फाइल नहीं किया है. कौन से 2 पीरियड? मतलब अगर वो क्वार्टरली फाइलर है तो 2 क्वार्टर के लिए, और अगर मंथली फाइलर है तो 2 मंथ के लिए. इसीलिए यहाँ पे जनरल टर्म 2 टैक्स पीरियड बोल दिया गया है. क्या रिटर्न फाइल नहीं किया उसने? जीएसटीआर 3B फाइल नहीं किया. थर्ड सिनारियो, अ पर्सन पेइंग टैक्स अंडर अगेन रेगुलर स्कीम. रेगुलर स्कीम वाले को क्या क्या फाइल करना पड़ता है? जीएसटीआर 1 और 3B. तो अगर जीएसटीआर 3B उसने 2 टैक्स पीरियड के लिए फाइल नहीं किया तो ब्लॉक. और उसने अगर जीएसटीआर 1 जो स्टेटमेंट ऑफ आउटवर्ड सप्लाई से उसने 2 महीने या 2 क्वार्टर के लिए फाइल नहीं किया है, तब भी उसका जीएसटी ई-वे बिल ब्लॉक हो जाएगा. या अ पर्सन जिसका रजिस्ट्रेशन है वो सस्पेंड हो गया है. रजिस्ट्रेशन ही सस्पेंड हो गया तो आप सेल कैसे करोगे? तो आपको सेल करना ही नहीं है और आपको ई-वे बिल भी जनरेट नहीं करना है. तो ये 4 सिनारियो में गवर्नमेंट ने कहा है कि आपका ई-वे बिल ब्लॉक हो जाएगा. 17th December, Preeti, what clarification is there? One can extend the validity of an e-way bill to 360 days from its original generation date. That is for e-invoicing. It's not for e-way bill. Okay, that what you are seeing is for e-invoicing, not for e-way bill, but they are mentioned wrongly as e-way bill there. But that is not relevant for your exams. Tambeshwari, what is your query? 200% of the tax or 200% value of the goods, Hardik, that depends if the owner comes forward. Okay, then it will be 200% of the tax. And if the owner doesn't come forward, then 200% of the value of the goods. So it depends on these two scenarios. Inspection and verification 24 hours and 3 days example. मतलब जो inspection है मैं बताता हूँ आपको. इंस्पेक्शन वेरिफिकेशन ऑफ गुड्स, जो भी इंस्पेक्शन करेगा, जो जीएसटी ऑफिसर रहेगा, उसको एक समरी रिपोर्ट बनाना पड़ेगा. अगर उसने 24 घंटे के अंदर समरी रिपोर्ट नहीं बनाया है तो फिर वो बाद में नहीं बना सकता. तो 3 लिमिट है. फर्स्ट इज 30 मिनट्स. अगर उसने रोक दिया है आपको तो 30 मिनट्स कुछ एक्शन लेना पड़ेगा. अगर उसने नहीं लिया तो फिर आप इन्फॉर्म कर सकते हो सेइंग दैट 30 मिनट से मुझे रोक दिया गया है लेकिन कुछ एक्शन नहीं लिया गया. सेकेंड, उसको समरी रिपोर्ट बनाना है. समरी रिपोर्ट 24 घंटे के अंदर बनाना पड़ेगा. एंड थर्ड, फाइनल रिपोर्ट जो है उसको 3 दिन के अंदर बनाना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि एक दिन के अंदर वो पूरा इंस्पेक्शन नहीं करेगा, जस्ट वेरिफिकेशन करेगा और बोलेगा आपके फिजिकल गुड्स आपको और आपके इनवॉइस के गुड्स मैच नहीं हो रहे हैं तो मुझे कुछ और इन्वेस्टिगेशन करना पड़ेगा, मुझे और टाइम चाहिए. या फिर बोलेगा कि डिस्क्रिप्शन ऑफ गुड्स जो इनवॉइस में है और ई-वे बिल में है और जो फिजिकल गुड्स है वो मैच नहीं हो रहे, मुझे और टाइम चाहिए. इतना सा वो समरी रिपोर्ट में दे देगा. फिर उसको क्या मिलेगा, और 2 दिन का टाइम मिलेगा जिसमें वो फाइनल रिपोर्ट बना सके. ठीक है. Yes, for e-way bill, Ankit, we had said that there is a separate website, e-waybill.gst.gov.in. There is a separate website for generating a e-way bill. What is your question, Preeti Kumari? If 3 days final report not prepared, then his validity period will gone. You can get your goods removed, no problem, because you cannot expect कि आप diligent हो और ऑफिसर diligent नहीं है. तो ऑफिसर 3 दिन के अंदर नहीं करता है तो फिर आपको कोई रोक नहीं सकता है, आप वहां से निकल सकते हो. Correct. 3 days plus 3 days extension can also be taken with valid reasons. Okay. If there are any more questions, please tell. In the meantime, we can take up the MCQs. Correct, Preeti. Your notification, I am not sure because it says 180 days and 360 days. E-way bill cannot happen on such time limit. Where did you get that from? Because on the official GST or CBIC portal, I'm not able to see this. In that exemption, Ankit, non-supply goods which are not liable to GST is excluded. So for the transportation of sand, e-way bill may not be required. That's what Preeti have taken from a private website. Just see on the GST portal, you'll not find it. That is for e-way bill, e-invoicing. That they have said that whatever previous e-invoicing which is just started and few people have not done it, for them that facility was given. E-way bill, no such facility was given. Yes. The answer for the first one is right. Everybody is given a correct answer. Cancel the e-way bill and generate a new one. Second question. A. No. The answer is D, both A and B. If the validity of e-way bill expires, the goods are not supposed to be moved, and the transporter may extend the validity period after updating the reason. Okay, both A and B is possible, and A and B has to be done. Correct. Till 8 hours before the expiry. You're right. Pre-B, no. Pre-A, answer is A. Well, yes, only on authorization from a registered person, he can upload the information in Part A. 'This I had not told. The answer is consolidated e-way bill. Yes. Consolidated e-way bill. Answer is EVB 2. For normal e-way bill, it is 1. For consolidated, it is EWB 2. This is consolidated e-way bill. 5, answer is B. Only one e-way bill can be generated on one invoice. Like I had said, no, when there is multimodal thing, then multimodal for each leg, separate e-way bill can be generated. Items exempted from e-way bill are which of the following? I know this list was very big, but the answer is yes. Postal baggage, postal department will not generate e-waybill. For currency, it is not good, so e-waybill is not required. Used personal and household effects, e-waybill is not required. So answer is B. E-waybill can be generated when a dealer is opting for composition scheme, makes interstate supplies. Is it possible? The composition scheme, the main condition is he cannot make a interstate supply itself. So he cannot generate a e-waybill for the interstate movement at all. When the goods are supplied by the unregistered person to a registered person, unregistered to a registered person, who shall generate the e-waybill? Somebody was saying A or B, jurisdictional range officer. He does not have any other work that he will generate e-waybill for us. E-waybill cannot be generated by the officers. It has to be generated by the parties itself. Not required. No, no. It will be required. It will be generated by the recipient. Unregistered person will not get any temporary registration for just generating a e-waybill. The recipient only will have to generate the e-waybill. Answer is C. Correct. No doubts in this. Both B, A, and B are correct statement. So answer is C. Good. Seeing lot of good responses from everyone. 3 more questions. Yes. No, a lot of confusion here. In case where the goods are sent by the principal in one state to a job worker in another state, who will generate the e-waybill? Of course, the principal only. Because job worker is only doing job working charges, the principal will generate the e-waybill. Answer is no in this case. We have not discussed this, but this is what I want to add. Will the goods be delivered to the recipient in case of transportation of railways if the e-waybill is not produced at the time of receipt? When you want to get the goods from the railway, you have to give them the e-waybill. Only then they will release the goods. What are the consequences if the goods are not transported as per the details furnished in the e-waybill? Correct. Answer is A. The e-waybill gets cancelled within 24 hours because if you do not transport it within 24 hours, it gets cancelled. Last question. The e-way bill number will be given to whom all? Transporter only? No. Of course, you will also have it. So it is C, supplier, recipient, and the transporter. All the three will have the e-way bill number. Okay. Any more doubts in this chapter? Transin is only for transporter? Yes. Transin is only for transporter. E-way will get cancelled automatically? Yes. Within 24 hours, it gets cancelled automatically. If you want to cancel it, you also can cancel it within 24 hours. EWB3 form. Let me just see the forms. That's the verification report which the officer gives. Once he checks it, he will give that in verification report. That is e-way bill 3. No, no separate registration required, Ankit. Normal GST registration is required. Separate registration not required. Yeah, when e-way bill is generated, generally people follow that the generate a hard copy, but just a number also is sufficient. E-way bill 1 is for generation. To generate a e-way bill, you have to use e-way 1, EWB1. For consolidated e-way bill, if the transporter needs, he will generate a EWB2. And during transportation, if the officer detains it, he will give a verification report in EWB3. Distance of interstate e-way bill, same. 200 kilometers one day, about 200 kilometers every day up to 200 kilometers one additional day. It could be interstate or intrastate. The limit is same, and for over-dimensional cargo and multimodal transport, 20 kilometers. If both the parties are unregistered, e-way bill will not be required. Bill to ship to who will generate the e-way bill? We have a 2-3 slides, Mallu. Please go through the video again. With the slides, you will understand it. Okay, so that's it then. We'll see you again on the Tuesday for the next topic. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next day.